Everybody screws up. I do it, you do it, your great aunt Nana Majaroo does it too. It's just human nature. You can't help it. But the worst thing that can happen is to do one of these screw-ups live on international television, where you also get the internet pointing you going, ha ha ha, you bored asshole, you're a moron. But given how long WWE has existed, there is an absolute treasure trove of these, and that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Simon Miller, and this is 10 screw-ups that led to huge WWE moments. Number 10, Daniel Bryan chokes Justin Roberts with his tie. So what was the screw up, you ask? Well, I've kind of just given it away, but I'll give you some details. When the Nexus was formed and told to go to Raw and just create absolute carnage, Daniel Bryan saw an opportunity to take Justin Roberts, who was the ring announcer's tie, and strangle him. Now, it made for an amazing visual because the cameraman got right in Roberts' face. He kind of went, I was like, oh man, he's really being choked. Unfortunately though, WWE was like, a PG program at that point, and 4 days later they said, sorry Mr. Bryan, you fired. Now that's screwing up. However, after a short run on the indie scene, WWE then did a 180 and they called Daniel and went, would you actually like to come back and be a secret member on a big team at SummerSlam 2010? He agreed. And he got such a big ovation, I bet when he was walking to the ring, he was like, man, I'm really glad I tried to commit murder. And don't get me wrong, it did suck that Nexus didn't win that night, because Nexus, as we know, absolutely should have won that night. But in terms of Daniel Bryan's career, it was massive, because he was standing alongside John Cena, Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, all these stalwarts of world wrestling entertainment. And from there, it just went up and up and up until we got to WrestleMania 30 and he became the champion. You see, it's nuts. Number 9, Roman's loss is Dean's gain. We will start with the screw up again because you need to know, and shortly before the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in 2016, the wrestling world just stopped when we found out that Roman Reigns, the big dog, the biggest star in the company, had actually failed a wellness test. Now, he dealt with this very well, he took ownership of it, and he apologized, but nobody, and I mean nobody, saw it coming. What made this even worse is that Reigns was the current WWE champion and had a championship match at said pay-per-view against Seth Rollins. So everybody was like backed into a corner. So what they did was they had the match, Seth Rollins won, but then Dean Ambrose arrived and he cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase and he became the champion. Now, we can argue this till the cows come home, and why the cows have been out so long, I don't know, but I don't think this would have ever happened if Roman Reigns had been suspended in the first place. It was one of those situations where I think officials were desperate to come up with something new and something creative, and they saw Dean Ambrose in the corner. They were like, maybe we could make him champion. And Dean was like, yeah, let's do it. And the really smart thing here is that when we do look back on this show, barely anybody mentions the fact that Roman Reigns got suspended because we're too busy talking about the now Jon Moxley. Number 8, Buff Bagwell changes everything. Okay, so what went down? Well, all you need to do is go back to that very first WCW thing that we had on Raw and watch the match between Buff Bagwell and Booker T. Now, it's nowhere near as bad as is painted nowadays. Revisionist history is a crazy thing. But when it comes to the fans, yeah, they didn't want to see World Championship Wrestling guys in their ring because for years they've been told, this is the enemy, this is the enemy. So as soon as they saw the enemy, they were like, boo, boo, you suck. And it got so crazy and so out of control. Vince McMahon heard this. I'm doing the Vince McMahon air thing. But Vinnie Mac heard this and he went, that's it. Nobody likes WCW. I am killing all our plans. And the plans were to actually air Nitro on a Monday night. Can you believe it? I gave away too much too soon because that is the big moment. The big moment is that the boss took all this money he had invested in a brand new brand and the idea of bringing that promotion back up to the sun, and he just threw it in the toilet. He threw it in the toilet all because he didn't think Buff Bagwell was a good wrestler. Buff Bagwell was out of the company before long. We all know what Booker T did. But it's just madness. It's like me giving you £10 to go to the shop and buy me some bread, and then I chase you down and I murder you instead. I mean, it's nothing like that at all, but it's just as nuts. Number 7, Kofi Kingston is stupid. On the 11th of January 2010 episode of Raw, the man Kofi Kingston would face Randy Orton and John Cena to see who would become the number 1 contender for the WWE title. And if you've seen this match, you know what happens. There's some kind of confusion between Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston. Eventually, Randy just slams with an RKO, and he's so enraged by this, he gets up and just goes, stupid, stupid, right into Kofi's face. It is funny. Basically what had happened is that the match was meant to finish with a punt. Kofi, I guess, forgot this. He stood up for the RKO, and yeah, the man who hears voices in his head was really displeased. This, of course, ended the planned push for Kingston, but in many ways, even though it took 4 years, it was kind of this that led to the New Day. And I know that's a bit of a stretch and a bit of an exaggeration, but I believe it to be true. Because maybe if WWE had continued on with where they wanted to get Kofi Kingston, he would have had a championship run, but then fallen back down to earth. Whereas here, he was kind of just swimming through the waters and wasn't sure where he was going to end up. Then he met Biggie, he met Xavier Woods, they did what they did, and now, and I truly mean this, are one of the most successful groups in history. I don't even think you can argue it. It also allowed us to revisit this whole thing in the 2019 feud between Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston, and that was a big moment to me, because who was the champion? Kofi Kingston, and who was challenging for that belt? Randy Orton. Life is nothing but a circle. Number 6, The Undertaker's botched reversal tombstone spot at WrestleMania. During the main event of WrestleMania 33, when Roman Reigns was taking on The Undertaker, we all remember this, there was meant to be a reverse pile drive tombstone spot where Roman Reigns would dance upwards and Undertaker would go, and they'd go around the ring like some kind of flippy thing, but instead, everybody just fell to the floor. It was a very sad moment all around because nobody wanted to see it. I know sometimes we laugh at botches, they just make me feel, well, it made me feel bad. I mean, it was miserable to watch, so just imagine what it was like watching it back if you were Mark Calloway, aka the Dead Man, aka The Undertaker, and this is what we learned from the Last Ride documentary that is now on the WWE Network. He was going to retire on this evening, but he was so disappointed with how poorly this match had gone, he changed his mind, and now he remains an active member of the roster. So don't you come up in my house and tell me that's not a big moment. Everything could have been different, but instead, it was not. Also, I love Mark Calloway, I love The Undertaker. He's a good guy. If he wants to wrestle till he's 200 years old, fine. Number 5, Nia Jax punches Becky Lynch. Amidst the chaos of a Raw versus SmackDown war that was going to go down at Survivor Series 2018, Nia Jax made her way to the ring, and she punched Becky Lynch so hard in the face, she broke the soon-to-be man's nose. That's right, it meant she was out of the pay-per-view, she wasn't going to be able to compete, and it seemed like doom and gloom. Instead though, it was an iconic image on this night that made all the difference. As Becky Lynch did walk away from the ring after causing some carnage of her own, she stood there with like a Conor McGregor type pose, with blood just pouring on her face, and I don't know one wrestling fan that didn't look at her and go, oh my gosh, that is the most badass thing I've seen in years. It was the formation of the man character, as I've already touched upon, and maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have main evented WrestleMania 35 if she wasn't injured here. Doesn't mean you have to go, oh, well done, Nia Jax, for breaking somebody's nose. You don't want to break anybody's nose in any walk of life, unless you're a boxer, because it's going to help you. We don't need to talk about that right now. But still, I bet Becky was devastated after this, because she was taken off the show, but ultimately, it was the start of something truly special. Number 4, Triple H's involvement in the curtain call. On the 19th of May 1996, in a house show that went down in Madison Square Garden, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall completely broke kayfabe, which was a big deal in the mid-90s, where after they'd all have matches against each other, they just hugged. I tell you, you can go and listen to some of the stories that fans had of this moment, and they thought the world was coming to the end, because they thought these guys were meant to hate each other, and here they were, just rubbing each other's sweat on. The problem was, there was only one guy that Vince McMahon could punish. Shawn Michaels was his world champion, so he was untouchable, and yeah, Diesel and Scott Hall were on their way to World Championship Wrestling, so unfortunately, it fell on Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And he was meant to win the King of the Ring in 1996, but that was stripped away from him, and who did it go to instead? That's right, brain, Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was at the end of that tournament where the Rattlesnake also uttered his most famous line, Austin 316 says, I just kicked your ass. And while it would be a few more months before he entered super duper stardom, who knows? This is a proper sliding doors moment. If Triple H doesn't do this, do we get Stone Cold Steve Austin? Which direction does the WWE head in? Would we be watching Nitro now? We will never know, unless you're somehow watching this in an alternative dimension. Number 3, Triple H tears his quad. Triple H tore his quad off the bone on the 21st of May 2001 episode of Raw while teaming with Stone Cold Steve Austin in a tag match that is still absolutely badass. And this injury was so devastating, it essentially meant Triple H missed a year of television. I mean, he missed the entire Invasion angle. Now, in many ways, that's good for the old man, but still, he would have been an integral part of it, obviously. 231 days later, though, the game did return to Madison Square Garden, and I tell you, even though this happened so many years ago, Go on the WWE network and just watch it. The evasion he gets, it's like the building is shaking. You can't help but get goosebumps and you're just some idiot sat on your couch. It is one of the best returns in WWE history, and of course it only happened because he went and got injured and I guess screwed up. But as we are learning, screwing up to these amazing times is just par for the course. Number 2, the Hell in a Cell gives way. Mick Foley was lucky enough to survive one fall at the King of the Ring 1998 when The Undertaker did grab him and chuck him off the top of the Hell in a Cell. Now that one was planned, but what wasn't is fall number 2. The cage roof was never meant to give way when The Undertaker did goozle mankind, which is why Mick Foley himself has said that fall is far worse than the first one because he wasn't ready for it, and also a chair came down and walloped him on the head. In fact, this was so bad, even The Undertaker came out afterwards and said, "I was genuinely worried that I had just killed a man in a wrestling ring." This is 22 years old, and you can still go back and view it, and your hands will be like this the whole time, because it's just chaos. However, the image of all of this has become legendary within the wrestling communities, and the match kinda made Mick Foley's career. He was a hardcore legend after this, and people both sympathized and empathized with him, and he just got better and better and better, and more popular and more popular and more popular, until of course he became the WWE champion, which he also managed to do 3 times. 3! It's simply unforgettable, and more so because of the screw up here. I still don't know how he did it. If you told me right now, Simon, you've got to climb over a 20-foot cage and just dive off, I'd be like, you got to be crazy, Charlie. Kiss my ass. Who's Charlie? Number 1, Owen Hart breaks Steve Austin's neck. Here's a little fact for you that Stone Cold Steve Austin has talked about many a time on his podcast. When he was fighting Owen Hart at SummerSlam 1997 and they were discussing what they were going to do in the back, Austin said to Owen, look, when you go for the pile driver, don't do it like a sit-down tombstone, go to your knees. Hart disagreed with this, and we know what happens next. He broke Steve Austin's neck. The thing is, Austin showed such toughness here and got such an amazing response when he did return a few months later that it actually invested the audience more in his character because he was basically living it. He'd been walking around going, oh, I'm a tough SOB, and now he had the evidence. See, I broke my damn neck, but I'm still here. This was also years before Kurt Angle. When he did return, not only did he beat the absolute snot out of Owen Hart too, but it was also when we saw the first stunner on one Vincent Kennedy McMahon, which lit a fire under the rattlesnake's ass, and he went all the way to the top. Now, I'm sure this would happen anyway, but look, we can only deal with what did happen in the real world, and we went from broken neck to biggest star in the world. That is one screw up to amazing moment. Do you know of any other screw-ups that led to massive moments in WWE? Then get in those comments right there and let us know. Then like the video, share the video, subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, head over to whatculture.com and you can read a bunch of articles, I promise. You can follow What Culture on Twitter, What Culture WWE, and you can watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. I'm so excited. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you as always for joining me. Have a good day, have a good week, have a good life. Why the hell not? I will see you soon.